To the smartest guy in the room, your host, Jerry Dempsey. Joining me, Matt Smith. Hi, Matt.
Jerry, what's going on? Another week down.
I'm telling you, I'm starting to get COVID, like COVID, what's it called? CVD or DS? Distress. I don't know. I'm just sick of the fucking shit. All right.
COVID cabin fever.
That's what you could call it. We're gonna go to the beach this weekend.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we go to this beach, Wrightsville Beach, down in Coastal Carolina near Wilmington.
Yeah.
And it's just a nice little town. And there's this place, we talked about in a prior episode, like the hangouts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like you got to have your corner bar or just whatever, your Cheers to really date both of us. Remember watching Cheers when we were little kids?
Wasn't that the best show? I actually named my son after Sam Malone.
I was glad you didn't call him Coach.
You know what? Maybe I should. I was watching Cheers one day, and I said if I ever have a son, I'm going to name him Sam, because I was such a fan of the show, and I thought it was a cool name. And then once he was born, and years went by, I lied to him and told him he was named after Samuel Beckett, the Irish playwright, just to make him sound more sophisticated. But then a couple years later, I admitted that he was named after a television bartender.
Interesting. Well, on that same note, it's funny how you and I, we've known each other forever, but there's a bunch of years where we didn't, just didn't talk because we're busy lifing. Right. But my son, the secret story behind his name's Quinn. And I named him after the Robert Shaw character from Jaws. I just left the T silent. Well, I was going to name him Quint, but then I had this person called my wife who kind of intervened and said, "You're not going to name him Quint."
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's the same as when we were growing up, but you could have a completely normal child, but if he or she is given the wrong name, that could ruin their life, at least during their developmental years, because kids are so cruel.
Yep.
We grew up with a kid in my neighborhood who had a strange name, and the person was abused. I mean, to a shocking degree. I don't even want to repeat the stories here. Yeah. But if his name was Mike, probably never would have happened to him.
It's terrible. I don't think people think that far out, Yeah. Like, how many moves does your average person think out in life? Like 1, 2, if they're lucky.
Yeah, I mean, we grew up in the early 70s where kids were savages, and I remember this guy who I'm talking about. Again, I don't want to say his name, but the name was, let's just say, different compared to Jim.
Was it ethnic?
No, but it wasn't Jim or Joe or Dave or Dan or Mike. It was weird enough to make him stand out. And I remember once they tied him to a garage and shot a spiked dog ball at him with hockey sticks, and they threw his bike off a bridge. They hung him upside down once from a tree naked and stuck a cigarette up his ass and made him smoke it. So,
dude, that's really wrong.
Oh, it's fucking terrible. And,
our happy morning has taken an evil turn.
Well, big shock that 6 people from my neighborhood ended up in prison. But
wow.
But years later, like 20 years later, 25 years later, I worked with a young woman, and she was a huge fan of the band Fish. And she said she wanted to name her son Elihu. And I told her the story about this dude in my neighborhood.
Right.
She ended up naming her son Joe.
Yeah, biblical names never go out of style. I mean, and that was pretty much the rage when we were kids.
Yeah. They won't get you beat up.
No, I never got beat up for being named Jerry. Jer the Bear was probably the worst, and I could handle that. But now, can you see my shirt? Do you see the Chinese writing on my shirt?
I do.
So that, and I'm hearkening back to our other episode when we were talking about nicknames. Um, that Chinese symbol is translated to the word Gai Lao, which translates into English as the white devil. My wife's grandmother, who did not speak English very well, she was an immigrant back in the whenever days. She immigrated from China, and Chinese people were always being invaded throughout the centuries. There's a reason they built that wall back in the day, right? So they didn't like foreigners. So it's not so much a racial epitaph as it is the unknown or the foreign. So they used to call anyone that would come to their shores or invade them white devil. And I guess because my wife's Chinese and from heritage standpoint, we have an interracial marriage, although it never seems that way. But her grandmother, that's what she called me all the time. And specifically, it was pretty funny. At my son's christening, we were up in D.C. Doing the ceremony and whatnot. And the grandmother just kept calling me Guy Lau. And I'm looking at her like, yeah, that's funny. I don't know what that means. And she was pretty old, kind of out of it. So, you take all that stuff with a grain of salt. And then one of my wife's uncles this guy loves to party too. So he's, slamming back his wine and he goes, hey, you know what she's calling you? I'm like, nope, I have no idea. He's like, she's calling you the white devil. You're the white devil. Ha ha ha. And he just kept laughing at me. So I had this shirt made because I always want to remember that I am the white devil.
You are the white devil. She was basically calling you a racial epithet.
Yeah. But I mean, again, when we grew up, it was pretty common and kind of like normal, I guess. Right? I mean, the Irish to the Italians to the Polish to whoever. I mean, everyone, the old men used to say, oh, I'm not prejudiced. I hate everyone equally. And,
yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was normal or it was commonplace.
Well, either way,
yeah.
you're the wordsmith, Mr. Smith.
The lessons,
but on that note,
the lessons our elders taught us, which is our subject today, believe it or not.
I think our subject is advice, how to take it, how to give it, what's bullshit. And I think if I'm not mistaken, we talked about a book you read recently about the subtle art of not giving a fuck. Is that true?
Yeah.
Is that where you got this? Is this kernel grew inside of you for this topic?
No, just living my life.
Got it. Yeah. Well, I had a little quote to kick us off. It actually comes from Eddie Murphy, who's got a big movie out right now. Did you see it yet?
Coming to America.
Yeah, we watched
the sequel to Coming to America.
My kid liked it, and that's all that mattered to me. But he saw the first one. He agreed with me that the first one was probably better. But as far as sequels go, Quinn said, it was pretty funny.
I liked the first one, but then the first one turned out to be one of those movies that every time you turned the television on, it was on, and I grew sick of it.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen the second one yet.
Well, it's more of the same. What's his name? Tracy Morgan's funny in it. There's a couple other new people in it that are funny. But yeah, I mean, if you're bored, I would watch it. All right, so my quote comes from Eddie Murphy, and it says, "My advice is, don't take anyone's advice," which I always love those oxymoronical kind of things. What say you to that?
That was the first thing that popped into my head when you mentioned the theme of the show today about advice and how to give it and how to take it.
Yeah.
I'm leery of giving advice. If I give advice, it's usually couched more in what I learned from my own experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I'm leery of giving advice.
But I mean, you have a life, and you know, there's this line that goes something like, I don't know, don't lose alone. Or no, success has many fathers and failure is an orphan. And, I've had a lot of people that say you learn so much from failing, but
That I
it's so
believe.
painful. So I mean, maybe that's the advice is don't be afraid to fail because you're
Yeah.
going to do it.
Well, isn't it something like, success is the result of failing many times or something like that? Um, I do agree with that. But again, I think, failure is a life experience. Um, and it's not, you know, I grew to really resent advice when you become a new parent and all older
Oh,
parents have advice for you.
oh,
It's like, where's this rule book, that apparently you read and I didn't know about.
oh.
Everything is, like parenthood is a gut instinct and love, and you hope for the best, and
Yeah.
that's pretty much it. There's no right way and wrong way, with the obvious exceptions, of course, like don't shoot heroin in front of your kids or something like that. But you know, I I really grew to resent advice once I became a parent.
That is, I can totally agree with you because when we had, what's interesting is I had my first kid when I was 40 years old. So, you live that long doing your own thing pretty competently, I might add. Um, you know, you kind of think you know what you're doing. Then you have a kid, and then all these people start telling me, and I hate being told what to do. Like, I hate it with a passion for some
Right.
reason. Because I've been told so many stupid things by people. At one point in my life, I had to unlearn a bunch of shit that I thought was right. Have you ever, do you know what that's like?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I remember in high school, I took the PSATs, like when I was a sophomore or something, whenever you take those stupid things. And I'd gotten drunk the night before, maybe with you, I don't know. But anyway, I went in and I didn't even read any of the questions. I just filled in the blanks because my goal was to be the first person done with the test. And I achieved it. But I
Well,
got like, I got a terrible, excuse me, I got a terrible grade on it. And I remember sitting with the guidance counselor, and as far as schoolwork, I was definitely a B to B minus average kid. So that's not too bad.
wasn't it? I remember there was a test where we had to take for the guidance office to. It was supposed to like give them an indication or give us an indication of what we should go into when we were grown up, what we were cut out for in life.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was called, but I think I remember vaguely. But my results were take the civil service test and maybe be a mailman. And I made the mistake of showing that to my parents, which I never did that again. So, again, live and learn, right?
Well, what was their reaction? Well, the guidance
Oh,
counselor.
they liked that idea. My mom was all for it. Oh, the mailman, you'll never get laid off.
Yeah,
You
well,
have
I
to
mean,
deliver mail.
the guidance counselor told you that you shouldn't go to college, right?
Well, he was pretty uh, politically correct, I guess, even though that wasn't a phrase at the time. But he said, not everyone. He was kind of saying it like, hey, don't worry about it. Not everyone's, cut out for college, Danny. The world needs ditch diggers too. You know. So I just remember thinking, well, I surely don't want to grow up to be a guidance counselor in a high school.
So did that piss you off? Did that motivate you, or did you not think
Yes.
anything of it at the time?
Well, I knew better because I always had an intrinsic belief in myself that I was smart. And it
Right.
didn't come from the outside world. I can tell you that. Okay.
Yeah.
So somehow that kernel of belief in myself was there at an early age.
Yeah.
And I don't have a lot to back that up. as you know, I won a scholarship to my high school that was based off the entrance exam. Um, and that was probably the only indicator uh, that I had any kind of intelligence. You know what I mean? Like, I'll put it this way: I have an older brother who's kind of a jerk, and he got his IQ tested because he was bad in school, not because he was good. But they determined that he was gifted, and the rest of us never heard the end of that. That was like one of my father's darts that he would throw at you, like, "Oh, you're not as smart as this one. He's got the high IQ." And in life, he has turned out to be the most unsuccessful one of the group. So there you go. Yay.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with school. I had a college professor who just did not think highly of me, and I was a journalism student, and my father and my grandfather both worked for the Buffalo News, and I don't know what this professor thought my father did there, but he told me. I remember he told me that I would never. This professor told me I would never amount to anything, and that the only way I'd get into a newspaper was if I got a job cleaning the carpets like my old man.
God.
So I didn't think anything of it at the time in terms of, but years later I figured out that he must have thought my father was a custodian at the Buffalo News, which he wasn't. My father was a printer, put the pages together. So he was wrong on that account. But, I went on to have a pretty good career in journalism and ended up being the desk supervisor in New York State for the Associated Press, and I won 15 to 18 like writing awards, and I'm not pointing all this out to brag about myself. I'm pointing this out to show once again how someone who thought they knew what they were talking about didn't.
Right.
I don't know if that pissed me off in terms of making me want to succeed. I'm the type of person who was always motivated out of fear, a fear of failure.
Yeah.
Every now and then that I don't know if it's wisdom or comment that he told me, he gave to me. I was leaving college, and that's what that was his parting words to me. The parting words that I would basically never amount to anything in journalism, and that pops into my head every now and then. So no one really knows what they're talking about.
I have been motivated in the past by proving people wrong. I've enjoyed that.
Yeah.
But I can't say that, like, I would lay there at night with the pit in my stomach thinking I'm a fucking loser or I'm never going to achieve anything. My parents didn't do that to me. I mean, they were, if anything, they were probably encouraging. I mean, I remember being bent over the engine of a car my dad and I were working on. And my dad said, I mean, it's one of the few times he gave me a compliment that wasn't, backhanded or whatever. And he said, listen, you're a pretty smart kid, get your ass through college and get into computers. He goes, I'm stupid. I can't give you much advice and I'm sorry. He goes, but you don't want to end up like me fucking working on this shitty car when you're 55 years old. And it made me appreciate him because he didn't pull punches and he definitely fucking was hard on himself. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe respect him.
Yeah, my parents were good at recognizing what we were good at, and then they would steer you that way. And I told you before, my father just said, you should be a writer because you're full of shit.
Yeah, good
one.
But
he had a business. He had his own business, and I worked for him, and he tried to bring me up in it. And it's a contracting business, and he was, he would always tell me, like, I'm setting you up so you can take this over and have something to fall back on. And but he steered me into being a writer because he knew that I wasn't cut out for what he did. And I give him, I appreciate him recognizing what I wasn't good at as much as what I was. But Um, I think if I had to give advice to anyone, it would be something along the lines of, you know, there's no guarantees in life. You got to just be willing to try, be willing to fail, and see how it all shakes out. Because, you know, you could love somebody and treat them well and treat them the way you were taught to treat somebody. It doesn't guarantee they're going to love you back. You
Yeah.
could work hard, you could work your ass off. It doesn't mean you're going to succeed, but because there's no guarantees, but it shouldn't stop you from trying. Shouldn't stop you from and failure shouldn't be something that keeps you from trying. That's really all I've learned in life.
Yep.
There's no guarantees, and you might as well try.
Well, and just I mean, I totally agree and follow that axiom as well. I would just say look for value in yourself and look for it in other people. I mean, there's the emperor has no clothes kind of mentality, and I've seen this in corporate life where a guy gets promoted up and then he hires all his buddies around him, or the guy that hires smart people and puts them around him. You always, it's our joke of our whole podcast, but you always want to be around people that are smarter than you in different ways. So you're, kind of filling out a full deck. I mean, when I look at my friendships, like my friendship with you, you're smart in ways that I'm not. And a lot of the friends I've had and chose through life are people that help me bring myself up, that
That's pretty
push
good.
me.
That's pretty good advice. I don't know if I consciously surrounded myself with people who I could learn from, but I think that's pretty good advice. And go back to the word value, because that when you said that, that struck me. Did you have a boy and a girl, and so do I?
Yep.
Did you raise do you raise your kids differently? And the reason I ask that is my son is older.
You
So
mean from each other, right?
did you in the way that you raise in the way that you're raising your son, is it different than the way you're raising your daughter? And the reason I ask that is because my first kid was a son, and
Uh-huh.
I didn't think too much about. I didn't have the kind of worries about a boy as I do a girl,
Right.
obviously. So when I had my daughter, I didn't know how to raise a daughter. I knew
Hmm.
nothing about raising girls, I didn't overthink raising boys, but I probably overthought raising my daughter, and I didn't have any idea on how to raise a daughter. So I thought the most important thing I could do for her was to make her realize her value.
Yeah.
And I it was along the lines of just because you're a girl doesn't mean that you can't do anything you want to. Because I think, women have the deck stacked against them. And they probably learn from an early age that I can't do this. This is a boy thing, or blah blah blah. And so I always try to raise my daughter to ensure that she knew that she was, that she knew her own value. And uh, I think one way I can illustrate that is, I kind of let my kids choose whatever they wanted to do and follow
Yep.
the whatever interest they wanted. But all of her girlfriends growing up were cheerleaders.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing that kind of like made my skin crawl.
Yep.
And my daughter never came to me and said, I want to be a cheerleader.
Thank God.
But I did say to her, just because you're a girl, you don't need to be the one who's cheering. You could be the one that they're cheering for.
Yeah. I like that.
So, you know, so she took that advice and she tried out for everything and she played 1,000 different sports and she was probably one of the worst athletes on the planet, but but she always made the team and she always like won these 100% awards and things like that. But But I noticed with her, she has a confidence that I'd never seen people have in themselves. And she does know her value, but she's confident almost to the point of delusion, which, which
And who's to say where that line is, right?
yeah. So I worried for a while that I created this monster, and she's very successful. Um,
That's
but
awesome.
God, she's just a savage. And but that was a big thing with me in terms of raising a girl was to make sure she knew her value. So when you said that word, it it
I say,
struck
I
me.
mean, but again, I say that I raise my kids different from each other based on the way they behave.
Yeah.
Like, when Claire was 4, maybe, she knew all the words to the Frozen song, and she would walk around singing it. She still walks around always having like a external inner dialogue, which is I always find awesome. She'll be in the backyard with all her animals, talking to them and having scenarios and whatever. So I thought she would want to be, I got Quinn, my son is trying to be an actor. In fact, he's got an audition today. And I asked her point blank, I'm like, I'll take you to the agency. They'll probably want to sign. No, Dad, I don't want to do it. But at the school talent show, she walked right up, grabbed the microphone, and sang the Frozen song beginning to end with no fear. And there's like 50, 60 people sitting on this like outdoor lawn and whatnot. It was amazing. I mean, I almost cried.
Yeah.
So I mean, to tie it back to boy versus girl, I get that. I don't know. I don't know. I parent to them and to their needs. And I have the
Which is
luxury.
smart.
Well, let me just finish this because I'm lucky from the perspective of we have all this stuff now, girl power. My wife works with executives all day, and she's actually, women in leadership. She partakes in some of this stuff
Right.
at her company. So we're in this the whole STEM. I mean, my wife graduated with a computer science engineer from UVA.
Right.
So she actually, it's funny because her dad raised her like a boy. Like,
Right.
you're going to be the alpha and you're going to be a computer science nerd like me. So there's a lot of dynamics, but I'm lucky that there's just more of a spotlight on this stuff and there's more resources. So
Yeah.
I would just say it's easier for me today because my daughter's like, I'm going to work at a zoo and I'm going to probably be a vet and I'm going to blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't care if she ends up not doing that. It doesn't matter to me. But to your point, or to tie it back, she will dream and pursue those dreams. And I give her the foundation of you're as smart as you want to be. and trust me, you can't be smart and not work hard. Like, those two are not mutually exclusive. They need to kind of hold each other's hands.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So what do we learn today?
I mean, I think we had this one of our better talks because I prefer to joke around, but sometimes you got to get a little serious. And I think the best advice is the advice you give yourself, and don't lie to yourself. As Rodney said, lie to chicks, don't lie to me, son.
Well, you can't argue with Rodney, so
Never.
I
Hey, I
think
want to give a
I
plug
think
for our
go
show.
ahead.
To our subscribers, we need more. We have a lot, and I want to thank everyone who listens. But please subscribe. Recommend us to your friends. Give us a shout out if you could. We'd love it. We want to keep doing this. So that's it. Do you want to say anything else, buddy?
No, I think Rodney was the smartest guy in the room today, and he always is.
There you go, buddy. Have a good one. All right.
Peace out.
Peace.